Hello.
Hi. Hi.
Hi.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the CASAA update for the week of 7/6/2015. Hi, Alex. And hi, Carl. How are you this evening?
Good. How are you?
I'm very good. Whoever wants to go first, please feel free because we're really looking forward to hearing this. That'd be great.
Well, I don't know. Mine is pretty quick, so if you want to get that out of the way, or we can save it for the end.
Okay. No, sure. We'll get the legislative done first. That's always the most fun.
Okay. So yeah, like I said, really quick, we just released kind of an updated call to action for California today.
Right.
SB 140 is headed to a hearing in the Committee on Governmental Organization. So we've put together a fully editable pre-written email for people to send. Anybody in California obviously can participate, but we really want to get people who live in districts represented by members of the committee.
Right.
So if you haven't received an email from us today, it's because you don't live in one of those districts. We tried to get this out there specifically for those people. I think it was like 760 people. So if you did get an email from us, please participate. You live in an important district, and we need you to, your voice obviously carries more weight. And California is very strict about receiving communications from people that don't live in their districts. We found that out the hard way a few months ago.
Right.
And of course, anybody who wants up-to-the-minute updates on SB 140, please check in with NorCal SFATA. They've been doing a really good job of mobilizing people and providing detailed information about California legislation. And I believe they are organizing a get-together, I think it's 1:30 in Sacramento at the Capitol on Wednesday. That's July 8th. And so check in with the Not Blowing Smoke folks, check in with NorCal SFATA. They're going to have lots of information, and that will be good. And so really quickly, I haven't entirely sunk my teeth into this. Moving on, Massachusetts has a pack of bills that we will likely be releasing a call to action for later this week. So I just want to mention that so that when we get that up, we can put that in the notes for the podcast. And
right.
shockingly, I've got the legislative update done in under 5 minutes. So
damn, you're good.
I'm just lucky.
All right. Yeah.
Well, that looks like it'll leave more time for me to come on this podcast. By the way, this is Carl Phillips. I'm not normally on this podcast, so for those of you who might not recognize my voice, I hope you know my name. I hope to take the opportunity for the finally slowing down legislation to come on this podcast and talk about some of the research, scientific, and so forth work that we're doing. But today I'm here to announce a new crowdsourcing plan for a new research project. And we'll put the details up on our blogs and our social media tomorrow. That's Tuesday, July 7th, for those of you listening to this later. So you can get more details there. But we wanted to introduce the idea and provide a bit of the background on this podcast tonight. I think most of you know that we have the CASAA Research Fund. Its inaugural mission, of course, was to design and fund the study by Igor Burstyn about the chemistry of e-cigarette vapor and liquid, which is probably the most important paper still on the topic of e-cigarettes. So we're very proud of that and what the research fund has done. Our goal with this fund is to identify very high bang for the buck research that will be important for tobacco harm reduction advocacy. And we think we've identified another such project to provide the definitive rebuttal of all of those gateway claims that you see floating around out there. In case you don't know, the gateway claim is a classic refuge of somebody who wants to condemn a low-risk drug or behavior, but can't come up with any reason based on its actual effects to do so. So what they claim is that it causes people to go on to do something that is harmful for them. And of course, the gateway claim all over the place about e-cigarettes right now is that they're going to cause people to take up smoking. Yeah. And okay, right. We're all sitting here saying, yeah, why do you even need to write a paper to say anything about it? And the answer is because it's getting so much traction among policymakers, legislators. I mean, Alex could speak to this. I suspect it comes up in every last one of these hearings that you deal with. Am I right?
It's
distracting. It's usually off completely, almost unrelated to what the bill they're talking about is addressing. It's one of those kind of, they just want to twist the knife a little bit. It's almost like, there's an indoor use ban being talked about, and the children are going to start smoking. It's absurd.
Right. If people are vaping in bars, yes, yes, it's utterly absurd. But the fact is that it gets traction. It's even part of the FDA's discussion. But what we don't have, as obvious as it is how absurd the claim is, what we don't have is something we can point to and say, here's the definitive rebuttal of all the gateway claims. Well, we sort of have that. You might have seen my paper that was circulated as a working paper on the blogs, and then and has now appeared in the see if I can get the whole name right, International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. And, it basically shows what research would be needed to provide any evidence whatsoever that a gateway claim is occurring. The difficulty here is that this paper is a highly technical methods paper. It's not optimized for advocacy purposes. It requires the reader to apply the methods that are in it. So if somebody's making a gateway claim, pointing to some awful paper by Stanton Glantz and saying, well, they said they showed evidence of a gateway effect here, it's necessary to actually step through the analysis and show why it doesn't stand up to scrutiny for the methods that I presented. And that's a good start. You have to start with something like that, but it's not a perfect piece for advocacy. And so the new research that's being proposed, and the research project would be led by Dr. Karen Heavner, who's been working with me on tobacco harm reduction research for 7-8 years now, wrote some of the first research on e-cigarettes and some other topics, along with Catherine Nissen, who worked with us when Karen and I and Catherine were all at the University of Alberta, and myself, to review all of the papers, blogs, and other claims that are being put out there as evidence that there is a gateway effect, and using the methods that I developed in this paper. And again, the full details, the actual research protocol and so forth will be out for everybody to see tomorrow. So I'm just trying to summarize here, but basically I provide a list of about 8 steps that you have to look for evidence of a gateway effect. And the fact is, to my knowledge, not a single one of these papers that are out there or blog posts or whatever actually comes anywhere close to meeting the necessary, to going through the necessary steps to actually provide evidence that there is a gateway effect. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of legwork involved here. You got to go through every last one of these papers, review them and say, nope, not this one, nope, not this one, nope, not this one. And so the research plan is to go through those papers, using the scholarly databases to find and identify them, but also to go through blogs, testimony, postings on authoritative websites at various government and advocacy groups where they make one of these claims, and trace all of these back to whatever basis that they're claiming evidence for a gateway effect. So you have this massive web of repeating statements that ultimately all trace back to a few papers, and those papers can be shown to not actually support the conclusion. So pulling all of this together, it's a rather nightmarish project in terms of the scope of the work, but what it does is it promises to produce a nice little crystallized single paper or two that say every last one of these claims is debunked here, and we can point to that. And so getting to the nuts and bolts of the crowdsourcing, the budget for this is a modest $15,000. Again, the research fund is all about big bang for the buck, and this is cheaper than about any research project you'll ever find. And even better, the CASAA board of directors voted to match every dollar donated on a one-for-one basis. So with that matching fund, we need the community to donate $7,500 to the research fund in order to be able to launch this project, which we think will be critical for advocacy. And well, that's Alex's area. He can jump in there.
Well, I can't speak much for the advocacy, but I can tell you, just reading all the stories I read every week, the more they bring up the gateway theory, the more it's reflected in comments by, normal people, the hearts and minds we're supposed to be trying to win over, and telling that vaping will be better for their loved ones than smoking will. They're starting to believe those claims too. We need to refute that.
Yeah, exactly. And it would be particularly effective to be able to, drop a single link to one research paper from a journal that says every last one of these claims has been rebutted. There is no evidence that suggests there's a gateway effect.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
there's a bit of, I don't know how far this would go legislatively. Obviously, going forward, it's particularly useful to rebut certain claims. The walking billboard claim that they used, they trotted out in New York City and other places for prohibiting public use, especially in outdoor spaces. But a lot of the preambles to these bills include some mention of youth use, especially now that the CDC has released their figures and different states have released their figures, and it's all being reported with shock and awe. So, it would be absolutely very handy, especially in a Twitter conversation, to just drop a nice link and say, nope, that one is wrong. Nope, that one's wrong too. And I'm really looking forward to this.
Well, it kind of, when Carl talks about tracing all those blog posts and stuff back, it kind of almost reminds me of, I don't know if anybody's ever seen the film Mindhunter, where they're taking and they're putting these pins into the map to trace down a serial killer. That's kind of what it looks like it's going to involve, but in a more technical sort of way.
Yeah, well, I actually did this once a long time ago, over 10 years ago, with some of the claims that were being made about smokeless tobacco. And, it was really fascinating. We ended up producing this, gigantic poster-sized diagram. Now there's much better software for this. I actually look forward to seeing how this plays out. There are all these cool networking software and everything, and but basically manually created back then this big huge diagram that listed various authorities making claims, the National Cancer Institute, the CDC, the Mayo Clinic, and everything, and tracing these back to the research. So many of them just trace back to each other, but then ultimately you trace them back, and basically all of these claims in that particular case traced back to a single research paper, which a single outlier result that's never been replicated.
Yeah.
And so the more technical research that I've already done on this topic that lays the groundwork for Karen's more practical research here is, sort of shows that nobody seems to even make a prima facie case for why a gateway would exist. They don't explain what it is they're claiming. Are they claiming that in all the history of the world, a single person will be caused to start smoking as a result of this? Well, obviously you could never find evidence one way or another on that. Or are they claiming that half these kids who have experimented with e-cigarettes are going to end up becoming smokers as a result, which is what they're trying to imply, and something that would be very easy to see in the data if it were actually true, which of course it isn't. And then, of course, the biggest problem, of course, is that the people who are trying to, make up the claim that there's evidence for a gateway effect seem to use the same tactic over and over again, in which they show that the same younger people, teens or young adults who have smoked have also tried e-cigarettes. And we say, yeah, because they're using them for the same reason adults are, for tobacco harm reduction. And but if you're just looking for just see a correlation in the data, you get the same correlation if there were hypothetically a gateway effect, or if every single person is trying to use it for tobacco harm reduction. So if you were to do this research, asking people who are currently 50 years old, have you ever smoked? Have you ever used an e-cigarette? You know what? You're gonna find a strong correlation there. But that's not because adults are taking up smoking. It's because they're quitting smoking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's frustrating. I know I tried to trace back just comments one time in a California newspaper, and I traced the comments all the way back to a 7th grade project that these 4 kids won tickets to go see a movie for. And they were the first ones I could find making the claim on a video. And then all of a sudden it was just like everywhere in California. It's almost like the game telephone. And that's just like newspaper comments. So I can't even imagine what it would take to try and do this for real scientific, what it would take to reverse engineer what passes for scientific research to disprove it.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting approach, and when we think of scientific research, we think of labs or doing a new survey, or developing analysis methods like the paper I did that's a jumping off point for this. But sometimes just getting into the muck of where information, and I use the term loosely, true or false, right? Where information comes from can be incredibly interesting, and that's what this project would do. But it's not so glamorous as a lot of these other areas of research, and it's a hard slog. But it can just be so incredibly useful, and I think that this is an example of that.
Yeah, well, I think we need it. So when the information goes up tomorrow, I'm going to be the first one who donates.
Well, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, and everybody, obviously any donations, large or small, are great. If you don't feel like you can donate very much, donate a token amount, and we'll be able to talk about the hundreds or thousands of people who supported this. Obviously we appreciate any donation of any size. I'll never forget when we first launched the research fund to fund that paper that was ultimately written by Burstyn, that research project that we had proposed and recruited him to do. And we were thinking, okay, in a month we ought to be able to raise the $20,000 that we need to do that. And that one was another great bargain. And we fully funded it in less than 4 days. I'm not necessarily saying that's our goal here or anything. But
it was amazing. It was amazing to see it and the way everybody came together. I mean, to me, this is necessary. You need to understand where the lies come from, and you got to untangle the web. And this is critical for that. It's critical for it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it would be great if we could do 10 other projects like this, and maybe this would inspire some other researchers too. It might lay the groundwork. I mean, this is the type of research that nobody ever does. And it's really true. I mean, I gave the example of that project I did 10 years ago. I haven't done anything like it since. I can't think of anybody else doing anything in this space that's like it since then. We all, we have these thoughts like you were telling us, Jan, saying, wonder where that comes from, and tracing it back and everything. And, actually taking that up a notch and turning it into, real proper scientific research and getting it into a journal and everything means that it means that you don't have to do that again every single time, because you have something to point to. Yeah,
exactly. And that's awesome. That's great. I can't wait. I can't wait to read. I read a bunch of these things, so I can't wait. I can't wait to see it completed. I can't wait. We need it.
Well, that's great. And like I said, I want, in this forum, I don't want to belabor it any, but there will be as much to read about it as anybody wants to, who wants to dig into the details of what the research plan is. There's a full research protocol, exactly as if someone were submitting a grant to a federal agency or something. Sure, it would be nice if the federal agencies would fund stuff like this, but we know they're not exactly on our side. So that's why we got to do it ourselves.
Yeah, unfortunately, but doing it yourself also kind of ensures that you're not. Even if you were to find something that was unflattering, you would tell the truth. Do you know what I mean? You can still hold your integrity up. You're not beholden to some federal agency and coming up with their conclusions, which is what they want.
Yep.
Whether they say it in so many words or not.
Yeah. Well, when I spoke at the last FDA workshop on e-cigarettes, and they make everybody, give this conflict of interest disclosure and so forth, I led mine off by pointing out that I'm there representing CASAA, the consumers, the real stakeholders here, and that's no conflict of interest with the science, because the consumers are the only people in this whole political mess who actually want the full truth and nothing but the truth. Everybody else has a game to play, an agenda to pursue. Consumers, if we're talking about health issues, that's a different project. But, if we're talking about health issues, consumers legitimately want to know if there's a risk. They don't want it sugar coated. They want to be able to make a good decision. And so, that is, something that's great about being able to work with CASAA is that only the truth matters.
That's right. No more lies. Well, it's true, right? So I want to thank both of you for coming on this evening and for talking about the research project. I'm super excited about it. I can't wait to go through all of it, and I can't wait to donate. Thank you for coming on. Have a great evening.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.